Hi everybody, welcome to my video. Tonight we're going to prime a canvas and get it ready to make a painting. Part of the problem with a fresh canvas is it's so rough that it's almost like sandpaper, and the paint doesn't want to flow and get down into all the crevices. So in order to seal that up and fill in some of those crevices and probably help with the adhesion too, we're going to use some gesso, which is common. The first three paintings I did, I've kind of been fighting. I've got 2 or 3 coatings of gesso on them, but if you look really close, and maybe we'll do a close-up later, you can see little pits where it didn't fill in all the little crevices. I've kind of been watching some other videos, and some of the people I've watched actually will take and do a couple of coats, and then they'll lightly sand it with maybe 400 or 500 grit sandpaper, and then coat it again and just keep coating it until it's glossy almost. I don't think we want to do glossiness, but I want to get it smoother than these because we're going to try to do some portraits coming up here soon. And this has been okay for, doing huge cars, and I can deal with some little pits and kind of fill them in, but it's been kind of a pain, and I'm going to try to do better. We'll see how this goes. So I'm going to zoom you out and point you at the canvas so you can see what we're doing instead of looking at my face. So the first thing we're going to do is unpackage the canvas. Get the gesso stirred up. Doesn't look like it needs much stirring. I'm going to try a little something different on this one too. I'm going to try a roller and see if we can get it to be smoother. The brush that I used on the first 3 canvases left big tall brush marks. I'm hoping this will be a little smoother. If not, we'll fall back on the brush. Not sure how smooth that's going to be, but at least I don't see brush marks. It's a lot like painting a wall in a house, isn't it? Watching somebody else paint is a tough thing to do because you're probably sitting there hoping I'll work on that spot or this spot. Just have to trust me. I'll get them all, don't worry. Well, I think overall the roller was fairly successful. I need to get some more paint. Maybe I'll just brush the sides. Well, I don't know if that's really any smoother than brush, using a brush, but I believe it's less noticeable. You don't see brush marks. It's just kind of a rough surface at this point. And here again, if we're going to sand it, like we talked about, that'll go away anyhow. That should be enough for the first coat. Let's get cleaned up and we'll come back and do another coat when that's dry. Get a couple of coats on there and then we'll try the sandpaper. I'll see what I've got out there as far as the grit, but I don't think we want to use anything really coarse because otherwise we'll abrade the fabric, and we don't want to do that. The fabric itself we want to keep, we don't want to abrade that. We just want to maybe break through the top layer of the gesso and get it smooth that way, and then put more coats of gesso on there until it's much smoother. But we'll maybe do a close-up here in a few minutes and I can show you how coarse that is. So this is a close-up of the side of the canvas with a couple of coats of gesso done with a brush, which would be your typical prep that most people would do before they started painting. And you can see it's really rough. You're not going to get a lot of good detail without a lot of work. Anyway, you'll see later on in the video, I tried to do a shot when I was done with all the experimental processes to get a smooth finish. And after I had gotten a smooth finish, and I tried to do a close-up, and it really just looks like I'm taking a picture of a piece of printing paper. So it's not much of a picture to look at, so we're not going to put it in there. But that's the desired effect. We want it to be smooth so we can get the detail we're looking for in our painting without having to deal with this texture. So anyway, there's the close-up. We'll move on with the video. I'm about to go into a few other experiments of techniques I've seen online that people use for this, and you'll see a couple fail, a couple that are successful, and so on. In the end, we get a decent canvas and to do our portrait on. The closer I look at it, though, it's got quite a big texture to it. Something else I saw in some of the other videos when I was looking at this earlier in the day is people would take a large putty knife, like a drywall knife, and just do a light pass across it. I think I'm going to give that a try because the roller that I used kind of left a little bit of a texture that I was not real happy with. Let's plop a little bit more on there. And everybody said this was a huge mess, and I'm sure it will be. We'll see. I took a little bit of sandpaper, because I've used this for several other projects, and made sure that I had a nice straight edge on that knife blade. That way I'm not leaving grooves. Let's see if we can kind of get this. Some kind of little piece of crud in there. Oh God, that's not good. Thought I had that clean. I would not call that successful. In fact, I think I'm going to go get my big brush and try to smooth that out. I guess we'll just deal with the brush marks, because I don't think the roller or the putty knife left the kind of surface we're looking for. I guess I need to decide which way the grain's going to go here. Probably up and down is the best way to go. Just kind of get it driven down into those little crevices. Well, it's about as smooth as I can get it with the brush. I think what we'll do now is let that dry and come back with maybe another coat and then give it a little sanding and see what happens with that. I would not call the putty knife or the roller successful. Okay, we're back after doing several coats of, probably about 3 to 4 coats of gesso on the canvas. I tried a trick that I saw on the internet to make it smoother, because I want to do a portrait on this canvas. And first thing I did was, instead of using a brush on the last couple of coats, I used a squeegee, which worked out pretty well. I'm gonna drop water on it there. It did leave a nice smooth coating. The problem with this particular squeegee was that it wasn't wide enough to coat the whole canvas. It only did part of it, and then when you do the other side, it would leave a streak of gesso material behind. So I had to kind of work through that. If I had this part to do over, I would probably get a screen printing, a soft durometer screen printing squeegee that would be about this wide. And the reason for that is you wouldn't have any serious streaks in the middle of your painting of gesso. With the sandpaper, obviously, we can make the streaks go away. And the idea with the sandpaper is not to take it down to the fabric. It's just to get the surface smooth, more like paper, and have less tooth to it. That's what they call it, when a canvas is rough, is it has a lot of tooth. Back to the squeegee. If you're not familiar with screen printing, screen printers use squeegees to drive ink through a stencil and a screen onto either a t-shirt or a poster or something like that. Anyway, the durometer refers to how soft the blade is. Soft blades in screen printing are not that useful, but they do make them, because there are rare cases when you need them. And if you don't go to the trouble to get a squeegee for each size canvas that you use, just try it first. Don't buy a bunch of them. But I would get the softest durometer that you can get from the supplier. I think that Dick Blick probably has, I've seen squeegees in their store before, because they have limited screen print kits available. I came from the screen printing industry, so I can talk a lot about squeegees. But anyway, I think if I had it to do over again, I would get a screen print squeegee to do this rather than a window cleaning squeegee. Although the soft blade did work out pretty well. It left a nice deposit on there. Anyway, now that I've got plenty of gesso on there, I'm going to go ahead and hit it with this sandpaper. And the finest sandpaper I had in my shop was 400. which I did try it between the last two coats, and it did smooth it nicely. So that's what I'm going to do, and kind of as a finishing touch on this, is just kind of work out the last little high spots that are there, and probably a sanding block would be a better way to go here, but we don't have to do too much because it's pretty smooth. I think it's going to work out a lot better for the portrait. I'm not really going to be doing any of the detail of the painting out on the corners, so I'm not that concerned. Really, this area is the sweet spot on the canvas where I want to get nice smoothness so I can do detail. And you can hear the paper making less of a raspy noise the more I go here because it's making it smoother. There's less friction. See, on these areas over here where it's still rough, you hear more noise. That's kind of a gauge to tell if you're making progress or not. That feels pretty good. I don't think I really need it to be any smoother than that. At a certain point, it doesn't really even look like canvas anymore. You're relying on the texture of so you can see the dust that it makes. And that's something you want to get rid of before you start painting too, obviously. I think we'll just take a paper towel and maybe put a little moisture on it and get rid of it that way. Let's dust it off first. Now we get a bit of moisture and the last of it off there. Anyway, that feels like a great surface to paint on. Should be able to do pretty much any detail you want to do and not have to worry about the texture of the canvas causing a problem. I don't know if you can see that or not, but you really can't see any signs that there's a texture of canvas there. It's just nice and smooth, kind of like paper. So with that, I think that's a success. We tried a couple different methods that I saw in different videos to do this, and some of them were successful and some of them weren't. Some people used all kinds of ways to get. Some people used a big ruler to try to get it smooth on there, and I figured the squeegee would be the best. Like I said, it wasn't wide enough to coat the whole canvas, and so you ended up with streaks. The sandpaper trick worked well. That worked out really good. So I think that's a success. The squeegee, I'd not seen anyone try that, and so I guess that's my idea to throw out there in the universe for people to try. But anyway, one other little trick that I do, and I talked about it in my earlier video, was that before I start doing my drawing with the pencil, I would probably coat it with some clear media or medium. And what this will do is it'll enable me to erase parts of the drawing are my hash marks without making a big smeary dark mess out of the lead from the pencil. So I think that'll help, and I think the fact that we've made it very smooth makes a difference too. You can end up with some pretty smeary stuff on a rough canvas with a lot of tooth to it, where I think this will be a lot smoother with the detail and so on. One of the questions I had when I first started doing these paintings was the order of coatings and what you use and what'll stick to what and so on. And I always knew about gesso, but I never knew, well, when I'm done with my painting, what comes after that? I always knew that you could put varnish on there, but one problem with putting varnish directly over your painting is that if somebody wants to do some work on it later and restore it when it becomes very old, if they start using the chemical to take off the varnish, it can begin to take off your paint too. So there's this thing called an isolation coat you're supposed to put on your paint first before you hit it with the varnish. So I didn't know that on my first painting, so I just put varnish on there. I doubt very seriously anybody will ever be restoring my painting, and it'll be a problem, but that's one thing you should do, apparently, according to the art supply companies, is you need the isolation coat in there. And that way, when someone tries to restore it and take the varnish off and replace it with new varnish, it doesn't get into your paint. So, anyway, I think we're ready to tackle the next painting. Got a nice smooth surface to work on, and we're good. So, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Thank you.